Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining from today. Thank you for joining our weekly live stream to discuss digital transformation topics. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. We've had some pretty significant technical issues, so apologies for the late start here today. All along, I thought it was our guest's problem. I thought he was the problem. We were trying to troubleshoot his machine, and it turns out I was the problem. So rookie mistake, I suppose, on my part, but thanks for everyone for joining us a little late here today. And thank you to our guest for bearing with me while I blamed him for the technical issues when it was me all along. So I'm going to introduce our guest here in just a moment. And today's topic is how robotics is transforming manufacturing. We're going to talk about a really cool topic. It's something I've never covered on this podcast before, but a topic I'm really excited about, not only because robotics is such a cool topic to begin with, but also because our guest and the company he works for is a client of ours, and we're doing work with them right now. So it'll be interesting to chat about their product and what they're doing for the manufacturing world here today. So I'll introduce our guest here in just a moment, but first of all, a couple logistical things. This is a weekly live stream. We do it same time, same place, although it's usually about 39 minutes earlier than we started today. But same time, same place. We stream to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter X. So thank you for joining wherever you're joining from here today. And also, we are checking and we're watching the stream of all the chats. So we're streaming, I think, to 10 or 11 different accounts across those 4 platforms. We're watching a consolidated stream right now. So any questions you have or comments, anything, we can see it all. So please feel free to jump in with questions and comments as we go through the topic here today, or as we go through our questions here. Secondly, another logistical thing, this live interview that you're a part of here today is going to be part of our formal Transformation Ground Control podcast episode. So we record the core interview of that podcast. We record that live in front of a live studio audience. We edit it, we add more content to it, and then we release it as a podcast episode. So that podcast is called Transformation Ground Control. If you go to transformationgroundcontrol.com, you can see all the past episodes of that show and also see this episode when it comes out here in about 2 weeks. So again, today's topic, how robotics is transforming manufacturing. One last question for the audience. If you don't mind dropping in the chat, what city and country are you joining from today? We tend to draw in a global international audience, so it's always fun to see where everyone's joining from. So I'd love to hear where you're joining from today. I'm here in Denver, Colorado, and our guest is in Boston, both in the United States, obviously. So I'd love to hear where everyone else is joining from. Just drop in the chat what city and country you're joining from. So joining me to discuss this topic about robotics in manufacturing is Chad Wright, who's the CIO of a company called Boston Dynamics. Chad, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Eric. My pleasure. Really excited to be here to speak with you.
Yeah, and hopefully you're not too worn down from the technical issues that I was having, but I appreciate you being here today. Before we jump in here, just with some of the questions I've got for you, tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of your journey. You and I have known each other for years now, even before your current role, but just tell us maybe a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into a little bit more about Boston Dynamics as well.
Yeah, my background is primarily in business systems analysis, project management. Sort of grew up on that side of the IT fence, if you will, and learned infrastructure management, cybersecurity, service desk operations a little bit later on in my career. And for the past 11 years, I've been working in the robotics industry. Prior to Boston Dynamics, I was at Amazon Robotics for 6 years, running traditional IT for a highly scalable robotics solution that's used in Amazon fulfillment centers today, and brought you things like Prime and same-day delivery because of the automation behind the scenes. And then joined Boston Dynamics a little more than 5 years ago at an inflection point when the company was transitioning from a research and development organization to a commercial business, launching our first iconic robot, if you will, Spot, our yellow dog quadruped robot. And been here ever since. Did a full digital transformation, walking in the door where we had really no systems, no processes, no people. Joined at about 200 people and about 950 strong today. And just been an amazing ride with all sorts of problem solving. And again, going through troubleshooting on a desktop is no big deal for me. It's part of our life every day in IT.
It's not a big deal for you, but it apparently is a big deal for me,
Right.
Based on how long it took me to figure out what the issue was. What got you into robotics, just out of curiosity? Did you set out to pursue this industry early on, or how did you marry IT with robotics?
Yeah, I actually got in by accident. I was really looking at The opportunity at Amazon Robotics came at a time when I was looking to make a change. I actually came out of healthcare, automated physician billing, medical billing, physician, patient records and things. So it came out of a completely different industry. I was looking at it from a pure IT perspective, getting an opportunity to manage an entire IT organization as opposed to just enterprise applications where I had done a lot of my background. And so it was an opportunity to sort of grow my skills and my responsibilities sort of horizontally from an IT perspective, and just sort of fell in love with the industry. And then when Boston Dynamics came along, I actually wasn't expecting to stay in robotics. I was looking to do something different. And when the job came, again, it was an opportunity to be the company's first CIO, and just said this is something I had to go for and give it a shot. And I've been super happy that I did.
Yeah, sounds like a super fun journey in a super cool, innovative area to be in, not just in IT, but within the robotics
Yeah,
industry is even cooler.
that's right.
So tell us a little bit more about Boston Dynamics. You started to talk about Spot and some of the other robots, but tell us, maybe just backing up a little bit, even more than that. Just tell us what's the purpose of the company, and what are you developing these robots for, and
Right.
just a little bit of
Right.
backstory if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
but I mean, Boston Dynamics is building robots that are changing the world, right? They move, they perceive, and they move around the world and manipulate the world in ways never been seen before. The company's been around since 1992. It was founded by a gentleman by the name of Mark Rabert. He came out of the leg lab at MIT, and he was studying leg motion of animals and humans, which is why our robots are predominantly legged robots, whether they're four legs or two legs. And for the first 25 some odd years of its existence, it was building research and development projects through DARPA. And they'd build one robot to solve a particular problem, a robot that needed to walk a certain distance without any assistance, or run at a speed, or climb the outside of a building, right? All these really interesting problems that they were solving. And that technology sort of manifested itself in our three robots today, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But all of that research has gone into our robots in the way that they are working in the world. And that's a significant advantage for us, I think, right? All of that research has really proven itself valuable in how we're able to perceive and move around and manipulate the world. And so we have an interesting history. The company was actually purchased by Google back in 2014. So from 14 to 18, we're owned by Google. That obviously made some cultural imprints on who we are today. Was sold to SoftBank in 2018. But during that time, the company, started to think about how could we take all that interesting research and technology and build a product. And that's where Spot came from. That robot was released at the very end of 2019, and that was that inflection point of the company. And then in 2021, we were purchased by Hyundai Motor Group, and that's been an excellent collaboration, understanding how our robots can help in the automotive manufacturing industry, as well as using their expertise to help us scale and improve our process.
Yeah, that's very cool, and really cool stuff you guys are doing. And it is interesting how I imagine both Google and Hyundai have had interesting cultural impacts on you. Um,
Right.
I'm going to come back to Spot here in a second, but just to give people a flavor for some of the innovative stuff you guys are doing, I wanted to play a very short YouTube video that's on your YouTube channel, on Boston Dynamics YouTube channel. And if you don't subscribe to this channel, I highly recommend you do. It's super cool. In fact, I hate to admit it, I wasn't subscribing to the YouTube channel until I was prepping for this interview, and I started watching all these videos, and I had trouble picking one to show. But I thought
Yeah.
this one was super cool because it's so different. And let me just show the video here. And this is and I'll ask you a quick question about what this is, but I
Sure.
just want to give a visual of something that you guys are working on right now. So hang tight 1 second. I'll play this video for you. It's a little less than 1 minute, so it'll go quick here. So super cool stuff there.
Yep.
And I assume, before I ask you some follow-up questions here, I assume that you were the one that taught it how to do the breakdancing and the cartwheel and everything.
I I can tell you that I was not the person wearing the motion capture suit that they used to build that routine. No, there is another engineer who has the lucky job of wearing the motion capture suit when they first build the simulations to do that.
Gotcha. I mean, when I first saw that, I thought there's no way that's a real robot, but I mean, it looks so. I mean, it looks like someone wearing
I
a bodysuit or something. And
I see faces. I see, I see humans and animals and dogs and things in our robots, and just being around them so much, and they're designed in a way to be sort of more empathetic to us, right? They're going to be part of our lives and so forth. So you really start to build those connections. I love the comments, right? I think that video received 4 million hits in its first day, when it dropped last week. And I love the comments. There was someone just pontificating in the first, second, or third comment saying how that they knew it was CGI. And if you actually watch that video very carefully, there's a point where I think, doing the breakdancing where, there's a piece of plastic that breaks off the foot and flies into the background. I mean, it's not CGI, like it's real. These robots really move. But what you saw there was the benefit of our research with, the Robotics AI Institute, which is our sister company spun out by Hyundai, 5 years ago. And it's all the reinforcement learning and the machine learning that's used to really smooth out those movements in a way that we've never seen before.
yeah, yeah, that's super cool. Now, what is that? Tell us a little bit about that humanoid
Yeah,
robot. It's a super cool, great
yeah.
video. But what kind of use case do you guys think or envision that it
That
would be used for?
so that robot there is Atlas. That's our humanoid robot. It's actually the electric version of Atlas. Atlas has been around for well over 10 years. It was a hydraulic version before that. The hydraulic version obviously was not anything that was going to be, sold, in any way, because it ran on, heated, high pressurized hydraulic fluid, right, which was not, very safe for the people around it. So about a year ago, we created, this new version, of Atlas, and the humanoid becomes sort of that pinnacle of robotics. It's designed to be the most flexible robot that you have available. Imagine training it on a variety of different use cases. These robots will be working in Hyundai's plant, in their manufacturing plants this year,
Mm,
and you can
wow.
imagine it performing tasks that people are doing today. There's another great video out on the YouTube channel as well, where Atlas is moving engine covers, and they're doing a sorting job where they take the different engine covers and they move them, from one case into another case that gets put right out onto the manufacturing line, so that the cases are put in the right order when there's where there's a Tucson or a Santa Fe or, an Elantra that comes down the line. It's grabbing the right parts at the right time. That is a job that is performed by a human today. Very, very monotonous, very boring type of work, but, something that Atlas can excel at.
Yeah, that's super cool. I want to turn to the audience real quickly. I want to say hello to Jeff joining on LinkedIn, from Frisco, Texas. Thanks for being here, to Jeff. Also, Malco says hello. Thanks for being here. Frisco Hub, on YouTube. Thanks for being here today, as well as someone joining from Brazil. I apologize, I don't see your name there, but thanks for joining from Brazil here today. And then Sased is joining from the Netherlands. So thanks for everyone for being here today, and thanks for dropping in the chat where you're joining from today. Curious to hear from the audience too. Just if you don't mind dropping the chat as we're talking here, how you could envision that humanoid robot being used in a manufacturing environment. I'd love to hear just ideas or hypothetical scenarios that the audience has in mind. But if we back up a little bit here and just talk about just robotics and what you guys are doing to change the world, to use your words and kind of your vision for the company, or not your vision, but the company's
Yeah.
vision for where you're headed. How do you see robotics sort of affecting and impacting the world of manufacturing in general here in the coming years?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to exploring the use of robotics to solve problems, right? And so what's the problem we're trying to solve? It's around, labor, quite honestly, right? These robots are doing work in the world around us. We have 3 robots that we sell 2 of them today. That's Spot, that's the quadruped robot. And then we have another robot called Stretch that's used in logistics and moving boxes. And then, of course, Atlas, which is still in R&D, and that's slowly being moved into production work later this year. But we see Spot used by hundreds of manufacturing customers today for things like inspections. So imagine there's jobs today that people are performing. They're inspecting pipelines. They're inspecting working equipment. They're inspecting, and looking for noises, vibrations, air leaks, gas leaks, heat anomalies. And take Spot and use it as a mobile IoT sensor. Put your favorite device on its back. It could be a point to zoom camera that's going to look at the gauges on the wall and detect whether the needle should be in one zone and it's in a different zone. It has a fluke and it's looking at noise and vibrations, or it's looking at heat anomalies. And the robot captures that data and triggers back to your ERP system, your asset management system, and triggers a work order to a human to go out and detect something that's about to fail, right? So
Mm.
we see the ROI in our robots is not about replacing human labor. It's really about the predictive maintenance and preventing the downtime. The human piece of it is a very, very small part of that ROI calculation, because at the end of the day, you can't afford to have your production line down for any period of time. And that's where we see the real big push for the use of robotics in that whole industrial inspection area.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just at your facility a few weeks ago with others on our team as we were doing some workshops with your team. And I got to see, I didn't get to see the humanoid in action like in that video, but I did see Spot,
Yeah.
that area in the back where you showed me all the different spots running around doing stuff. And you had pointed out how there's a bunch of cameras that's constantly capturing information about the environment. Tell us about that. Like, so it may be using it in the context of that use case around predictive maintenance and reading a
Sure.
gauge or spotting a visual problem with something. How do the
Sure.
cameras and AI all factor into that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the Spot robot, to give people a sense, is about the robot itself is about 75 pounds and has a payload capacity of carrying about another 30, 35 pounds. So, all in all, it's about 100 pounds. It's not terribly large. I have a black lab at home, a 7-year-old black lab dog. He's just about the same size, about 85 pounds, just about the same size. And that robot has 5 cameras on it, right? It's got sort of 2 in the front of, like, let's say its face, and it gives it about 180-degree view. It's got 1 on each side, 1 in the back. So the robot is constantly looking at the world 360 degrees around itself and constantly building a point cloud and looking at what might be around it, and gives it the ability to move. And it's been trained with a number of, rules and algorithms, if you will, for how to move and how to detect something, whether you step over it or step around it. As a legged robot, it has significant advantages in your factory or in your manufacturing floor, because it can go upstairs and go up and down stairs. It can step over threshold. It can step over objects, although it tends to move around objects that are on the floor. It doesn't need to know exactly where it needs to go. You just tell it sort of like A to B, and it'll figure out how to get there. And so that's why these robots can be very good in an industrial setting like that, because the environment is not always predictable. We have an idea of what the factory is going to look like. We have an idea of what it's going to be, how it's going to be laid out, but there's movement of people, there's movement of equipment. And so the robot needs to be able to navigate it. And that's where those cameras come in, and the sort of the AI aspect of sort of perceiving the world around it and then moving and manipulating within it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super cool. Um, here's a comment that's sort of related to that here from Gary. I'm sorry. I believe it's Gary on LinkedIn. It's sad that there's so much focus on robots taking jobs. I think using robots for automation and manufacturing is one of the greatest opportunities for humanity. Is that how you guys view it too? I mean, it sounds like you're not really looking at this as a replacement for humans, but more of an augmentation.
Yeah, and it really is. I think that's a great question or a great comment. It's one that I hear all the time. Having worked at Amazon and for 6 years, and now Boston Dynamics for another 5, everywhere where I go, I get that question or that comment, right? And so there are some people that are just absolutely afraid, right? They see a robot and they think the Terminator. Our our chief strategy officer, Mark Tierman, has a great comment to that. When he first joined the company, he was watching and posting on LinkedIn, and someone said, "Oh, Mark, you're going to go there and build Terminators," and he said, "Actually, no, we're building C-3POs." Right?
Oh,
So for the science fiction fans in the world, you know who C-3PO is, right? C-3PO is an assistant. It's a co-working robot. And that's where we see it is. I mean, there's genuine problems that we're going to have in the logistics space, in automotive, in warehouse and manufacturing. Like we have this labor shortage that's looming. And as our population ages and retires and gets out of the workforce, there's going to be a lot of tribal knowledge that goes with these people, in addition to their ability to move the physical world around us, whether it's objects on a production line or boxes in your supply chain. That's a real problem. And the companies that have the foresight and the advanced thinking to be investing in these areas are going to be the ones that come out winners.
yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. It's sort of like, people that are afraid of AI. A lot of time there's a lot of fear around AI replacing jobs, but I tend to see it as something that's just going to make us all better at our jobs if we embrace it.
Agreed.
So that's very interesting. So here's a comment from Will on LinkedIn. Will says, "Greetings from Naperville, Illinois. It's remarkable to witness the rapid advancement of robotics in recent years. Having attended ProMat last week, I was thoroughly impressed by the extensive presence of companies in this field. Just 15 years ago, few of these vendors were actively targeting distribution and logistics firms, underscoring the significant evolution in this space." So great point there. And another comment here from Norberto on YouTube. "How amazing. I can see how this reduces the risk of adoption." And there's a follow-up to that too, and cuts down the cost of revamping a line. And that's sort of like related to that use case you were just talking about with Spot.
Yeah, that's a great observation there with cutting down the cost of revamping a line. There's a case study on our website. There's a small semiconductor company here in New England that was faced with the challenge of revamping their entire production space with sensors. Right, they had legacy equipment. They were looking to invest in IoT to help monitor and maintain their production line. And it was, I don't know what it was, 7-8 figure investment they were looking at for doing something like that. And so we worked with one of our partners to go in there and show them how to use Spot with their IoT sensors on its back. So instead of investing millions of dollars in putting sensors all over your plant, they put them on Spot's back and then built a series of rounds for Spot to do around that building. And the ROI was off the charts, and allowed them to still solve that problem around preventive maintenance and improve the quality and throughput without having to tear apart the physical space and make these investments.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of related to that. Here's another comment here from Gary. "There are things that we would not want humans to do that robots are ideal for. Consider trying to colonize Mars. I think sending an army of robot workers to Mars would be the only realistic first step to build the initial infrastructure needed to safely support human life." That's super interesting.
It is, and it's a great comment. We describe it as dirty, dull, and dangerous. Right, the jobs that our robots excel at are the jobs that are dirty, dull, and dangerous. Our robots are working on multiple nuclear sites around the world right now. Chernobyl, right, is probably maybe one of the more popular ones. The robot is there because it's doing work in spaces that are just too dangerous for humans. And we've unblocked multiple problems that teams were having on the ground in these spaces because they couldn't get into the back room of the plant because there was a door there, and Spot shows up on the first day and walks to the back of the plant, opens the door, and lets the other robots go through that were trying to do work. Right, they didn't have the arm and the ability to open doors. I mean, it was just it's amazing. And you can't help but be proud to see how the robots are put in places where they're actually protecting humans and still getting this work done.
Yeah. Another example or interesting story you told me when I was there a few weeks ago, your facility in Boston, is there's a older version of Spot that's in. You guys have this little. It's not a museum. It's a museum. Okay, I was going to say it's like a museum, but it is. So it's all these old versions of the different robots and how they've evolved over the years. And you have this one version of Spot, and it said Boston PD on it, and then it had like 2 or 3 bullet holes in it.
Yeah.
And there's a story behind that, and because I saw that and I thought, what's with the bullet holes? And you told
Yeah,
me the
so
story.
this was Roscoe, was a spot robot that was adopted by the Massachusetts State Police. And there was a situation last year where an armed individual barricaded himself in a house. The call went into the police that there were people involved and it was a hostage situation. And so SWAT team came on board. They brought Spot with them. Spot entered the home. All those cameras that you talked about were able to very quickly identify what was going on inside the home, realize that there were no other people there. This person was, was barricaded themselves. And so Spot, they attempted to just walked around the house, followed the gentleman who kept going from room to room. And I guess the person got a little tired of Spot following him. So he shot it. Actually shot it 2 times. Spot got up both times. Got hit in the arm, got hit in the leg, got hit in the sort of the torso, if you will. Shot it a 3rd time. Didn't get back up after that. But when they told the story to all of us here at Boston Dynamics, it was pretty amazing to see the pride in the engineers' work, that they just said, look, we saved people today, right? That could have been a person going into that space and getting shot and killed. So it's pretty amazing the use cases that people are using. Public safety tends to be a big one. Putting it into there was a parking garage that had collapsed in New York last year, the year before, and putting Spot into these dangerous situations. Mining is another one. Construction sites, like all of those are very important. Use cases and areas where we find Spot really contributing.
Yeah, yeah, and you talked about how the robots you guys develop have legs, whether it's 2 legs, 4 legs, and they also have faces. And the reason I bring this up is because on one hand, I agree with the previous question, and obviously you're sort of validating that these robots can be used to protect human lives. But there's something that's sort of like a humanization of these robots that almost makes you feel bad for Spot getting shot, even though it's a robot. It's still like, oh, poor Spot, he got shot twice by an
We
armed dude in a house. But what is it? You were talking a little bit when I was there for a few minutes. You told me a little bit about how you have people on your team that focus on what the face should look like and how to, what does it, interact better with
Yeah.
humans or create a
Yeah.
more emotional bond with humans? Or
Yeah, we have a team that focuses on human robotic interaction, and that's everything from the color to the texture to what does the face look like, and there's an extraordinary amount of thought that goes into that. Because at the end of the day, these robots are going to be around humans, and we're going to see them every day. And how do we react to them? You mentioned when you were here on site, you saw Spot walking around, right? We give Spot missions, and it just walks around the building doing these. They're fake missions, but they're doing things because not only are we just testing Spot's ability to go read a gauge over on this hall and go read another gauge in that hall. It's really about how does the robot interact with the human. And so as we've been learning more and more from our customers, we're adding more and more features and enhancements to the robots, like shining a colored light. Like a green light means that it's moving and it's safe. A white light means that it's doing work, it's stopping and it's taking a reading or a register. Red light might mean take warning, don't go near it. And should it have a sound? Should it have a face? Should it have eyes? Like all of those things are really, really important. That human robotics interaction team takes that very, very seriously, and how we go about creating that image or likeness that you're going to interact with.
yeah, yeah, that's super cool. I imagine it also has a way of making it feel a little less threatening. That if it has that sort of human and emotional response that you're talking about,
Yeah,
you could see
yeah.
it. Pretty well.
I'll give you a great example of that. We had Spot we were at our ERP vendors conference a couple of years ago, and we brought Spot with us, which is always a great party hit, right? And we had Spot at the cocktail hour at the end of the day, and walking around, and we let people drive it. Like people are always blown away at that. We said, give them the control, and said, go ahead and drive it, try it out. And there was a gentleman that was at the conference, and he had his son with him. It's maybe like a 3 or 4-year-old boy. And, he did the typical holding his dad's leg, peeking around, wasn't quite sure what to think of it. And we kind of stopped the robot in front of him to see what he would do, and the father said, "Hey, it's a dog, it's a dog, it's a doggy. Go see the doggy." And the little boy walked right over, and it's like he looked at it a little, and he like put his hand on it like you would pet a dog.
Right.
And for us, in IT, we think about that all the time. It's user interface, it's user experience. And once he sort of start to think about it as a dog and not a robot, it was like it's like game over. The kid was in love, right? Like
Yeah.
and he had that relationship with it. And so that's interesting. We see robots here. Robots get driven around on they put on a cart, because maybe they're taken to another part of the building to be fixed, or they're on a stretcher. All right, we have stretchers for the humanoids, and you see them and you feel empathy. You feel, oh no, the robot fell down and got hurt, or something's wrong. And it's just a really interesting interactions that we tend to have with these machines.
Yeah, I know when I saw him walking around, there was a an urge for me. I wanted to pet it,
Yeah,
but if I caught myself. Obviously, I
yeah,
was like,
right,
"Okay,
right.
robot. I'm not gonna." But there was that sort of like
Sure.
subconscious or just knee jerk reaction I had to it as well. So I think it's very interesting. Here's an interesting comment from Cecilia on LinkedIn. Cecilia says, "I find it incredible and fascinating. Not just performance control that are humanly impossible, like real-time predictor analysis before a line fails, but also for rescue missions or highly dangerous tasks." So you can see, like you think about really dangerous jobs like coal mining or
Yep.
oil rigs or whatever, so many different use cases where you could think how many lives or injuries and safety violations or safety issues could you address by relying more on robots like these?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have, very much a culture of data and analytics, and we track things. I can't say we track, lives saved or lives impacted, but we track things like miles walked, missions performed, and I think our spots walked over 90,000 miles last year,
Wow.
performing, millions and millions of missions. And that gives us a great deal of data to improve. And you talk about AI and machine learning, it gives us a great deal of data to improve how our robots perform over time. And it's really interesting.
So are you guys, speaking of AI, and this is sort of getting into the whole industry 4.0 and internet of things movement, but you've got these cameras, you've got these sensors on these different robots, and if they're on a manufacturing shop floor and a distribution center, what kind of data are all these robots collecting, and what are you guys doing with the data, and how does it feed into AI?
Yeah. So we deal with data the way that our customers want us to deal with data. We don't have direct access to the robots in the field. We allow our customers to opt in. So they can opt into a program where they share us some anomalized and sort of cut down data. We look at falls, we look at steps, just some very basic information. But for a customer that's using this, they're taking images, they're taking readings, they're taking video. So all of that data is managed locally, right, within their environment. We have a software as a service product called Orbit that we launched last year. That is a fleet management software. So imagine that you have dozens of these robots working in your plants all over the world, and that can be centrally controlled and centrally located wherever you want, through our Orbit cloud, and you can see what the robot sees in real time. You can manage notifications and messages and integrate that back to your ERP and asset management systems. It really is gives the flexibility for parts of the world like in Europe where you've got data privacy and things. We do face blurring on the video, and that's for all the robots, even our stretch robot, which we haven't talked about yet. Stretches, it's a big base with an arm, and it moves boxes in the back of a truck. That video could still look at your plant, and so the people that are there, and so we do face blurring and other things to try to maintain privacy for our customers. So that data is a big deal, right? And we continue to evolve our policies around that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super cool. And the SaaS model that you guys have started to adapt, and the just the ability to be able to track all this information add additional value beyond the robot itself. I think that's super fascinating.
Robots create an extraordinary amount of data. I mean,
Yeah,
it's amazing how much data they collect, and for me as a CIO, that's a huge part of our strategy. Hybrid cloud technology in supporting, the performance of these robots and the data that's created. It's a lot for sure.
yeah, yeah. Now here's a comment from Saeed on LinkedIn. Saeed says focusing on the why behind automation is key. It's not just about replacing human labor. It's about creating a more efficient, safer, and more innovative manufacturing environment that ultimately benefits everyone through better products, lower costs, and improved working conditions. It's
Yeah.
pretty well said. What are your thoughts on that comment?
Well, I think about it as the flywheel, right? So if you think about, what are the things that impact each other in that sort of cyclic manner, right? So the idea of that flywheel would be, you have robots that create value, right? They're doing things to increase productivity. They're doing things to increase value to your customers, and when that happens, your customers are going to improve, or they're going to like your products better, and they're going to they're going to have a better experience. They're going to talk to their friends, and they're going to gain more customers, right? So again, I've invested in my robots. They're increasing my productivity. That's making my customers happy. They're going to talk to more people, and I'm going to get more customers. I'm going to increase my revenues as a result of that, and I'm going to take those revenues, invest them into new jobs and new robots and new robot features, and you complete that flywheel, right? So, and this was something that Amazon was extraordinarily good at, and we're starting to do it now with our customers, where we've had enough time for our robots to be used in the field to do this. Ty Brady, he's the CTO at Amazon Robotics. He was my peer there for a number of years. He just came on record last year to say how that in Amazon, in the 10 years, in and around the time that I was there, we grew from building 1,500 robots a year to 100,000 a year. They've deployed over 750,000 mobile robots in their fulfillment centers. And in that 10-year period, they created over 1 million jobs.
Wow.
And of those 1 million jobs, there were 700 different job codes.
Wow.
Right. So you start to hear this term robot wrangler, right? We use it here, and I was kind of chuckling about it first, but if you go out to any of your job sites today and you search for robot wrangler, you're going to get a bunch of jobs out there. People and organizations are starting to think about it. There's almost 500 universities in North America that have robotics programs. And that's about building the robots. But what about using the robots? I drove by a community college up in White Mountains in New Hampshire. Come join our robot wrangler program. I had to pull over and almost, I was like, wow, like this is amazing. Like companies are looking for talent. Organizations are training. Like we need to think about reskilling and upskilling. And that is all going to help make that flywheel spin even faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned Amazon, and you talked a little bit about how you originally came from Amazon before joining Boston Dynamics. But that's where you and I first met. Is you were CIO at a company called Kiva Systems, which was then acquired by Amazon, which then was branded as Amazon Robotics.
That's right.
How are the robots that you guys made at Kiva / Amazon Robotics? How are those robots different from what you guys are doing at Boston Dynamics?
Well, most fundamentally speaking, from a non-roboticist, it's really about how they move. The Kiva Systems robots, now the Amazon Robotics robots, for the most part, they move by reading a QR code on the floor. So think of a large sheet of graph paper with this meticulously created grid on the floor with QR codes, and the robot reads those QR codes on the bottom, basically moves in 90-degree straight lines and 90-degree turns throughout 1 million square feet of area. And those robots, there's a control system that will determine if two robots are attempting to go to the same square. There's some movement capabilities and some rules that will dictate that. And then the Boston Dynamics robots are completely autonomous, right? They're just observing what's around it. And if it sees a conflict, it will try to figure out how to resolve that conflict by moving around it, by waiting for an aisle to clear, whatever that might be. But it is interesting, as Amazon, I keep in touch with my friends at Amazon Robotics, and that grid-based, that QR code-based solution is an amazing solution for that problem, and they are again supplementing what they do with other robots, arm-based gripping. Right, you have to grab millions and millions of different SKUs. Our robot Stretch grabs boxes, and that's a very, very different problem that you need to solve. But just having been around these engineers for so long, it's so fascinating listening to how they go about trying to attempt these very sometimes impossible, very, very difficult problems.
Yeah, that's very cool. Um, a comment from Will Quinn on LinkedIn. I won't pop it on the screen just because it's a bit of a longer comment, but I'll read it to you here. Will says, it's wild to think about how distributors were already scrambling to find pickers, packers, and warehouse folks before the pandemic hit. Now with e-commerce going through the roof and warehouses being up everywhere, it's only gotten crazier. Those labor shortages are worse than ever. Humanoid robots could totally step in there, tackling the grunt work like picking and packing while also handling the sketchy stuff like lifting heavy loads or working in dicey spots.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great comment, Will. It goes to show you, Amazon bought Kiva Systems back in 2012. Imagine the foresight, right,
Yeah.
to make that decision. It was one of the best. Amazon will tell you this. Harvard Business School wrote a big case on it. It was one of the best investments that they ever made. It was one of the best acquisitions, right, from a pure M&A perspective, that Amazon had ever done. And I'm so grateful to have been part of that. You talked about humanoids being able to step in and do all of those things. It's very interesting. One of the first things that we talk about with our customers here at Boston Dynamics when we're helping them think about the use of robotics is, what's the right form factor? Right? It's easy to say, well, I'll get a humanoid to do it. Well, maybe you don't need a humanoid to do it. Right? Maybe you can get by with a different type of robot. Maybe your factory floor is completely flat and smooth, and a wheeled robot would work just fine. It's really about understanding the form factor and then looking at the robot that makes the most sense. The promise of the humanoid is because of its flexibility, right? And you can train it on one task and have it do another task, right? And you can start to build and accumulate those repetitive tasks and whatnot, and give the robot now the ability to figure out, how do I solve this problem, right? We're not there yet, but that's the promise of AI as well, is continuing to advance to that level.
Right. Absolutely. Now, what about when you have your customers who are trying to implement these robotics at scale, and coming at this from a CIO perspective, your CIO perspective, what are some of the key infrastructure and integration considerations when a customer of yours is trying to implement robotics at scale?
Yeah, I saw someone ask in the chat as well, do they run on local area
WAN?
networks and whatnot? It's like Wi-Fi and cellular, right? Is usually how we think about it. And as we prep our customers, we talk a lot about what's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the right form factor of a robot that needs to do it? What are the business processes that you're looking to disrupt with this? What are the types of IoT data that you're going to create? Is your infrastructure capable of taking on that volume of data? Where are you going to store it? How are you going to access it? What are you going to do with it? Right? Those are all really, really big challenges. Network is a big deal too. Like I said, the robots generally work on Wi-Fi because they're going to connect back to your area. It's not a requirement. The robots can operate, but if it's going to connect back, which is what you want to do, it's going to connect back to your infrastructure. It's going to be through Wi-Fi or cellular. And I say cellular because we have customers like power companies that have large outdoor spaces, and those power companies, you don't have Wi-Fi necessarily in that physical space, so they're looking at, they're carrying some sort of cellular unit that they can use to communicate. We have robots inspecting pipelines over long distances. I've seen a use case video of a spot that was inspecting a vineyard, right? So you think like outdoor use cases where cellular can be really, really important. So a lot of different questions that we help. We just launched a Boston Dynamics consulting group in the last 2 weeks. And those are the people that are going to come in and really help, whether you're using our robots or not, really help you put that strategy together and think about those types of questions as you get ready for robots to come on site.
Yeah, that's super cool. You also had talked about, when I was visiting with you a few weeks ago, you talked about how these robots have been tested to withstand some pretty extreme weather and temperature types of situations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you're referring to the hyperbaric chamber that we had in on our test floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're certified. I don't know the names of the certifications, but they're certified to a certain certain high temperature and low temperatures, certain amount of water. Certainly, they're not going to walk to the bottom of a lake, but they can withstand rain, wind, sand. We have what we call the Dino Pen here at our facility. That's an outdoor facility, and the robots get a full treatment of year-round New England weather,
Mm.
right? So it could be 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summertime. It could be 20 below Fahrenheit in the wintertime. Lots of rain, lots of sun, lots of dirt. All of these types of things. And the robots are set to do that. And it really, again, depends on our customers. You mentioned oil rigs earlier. We have spot robots working on oil rigs for long periods of time without any human interaction. And the salt water is damaging to a lot of equipment sometimes. And so it's important to us that our robots can be autonomous, and that means that they need to be self-sufficient in those ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you, here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian says, have you encountered examples where automation actually helped retain human workers by removing high turnover or high risk tasks?
Oh, interesting question. Um, I know that at Amazon, I was there during a time where Amazon was converting their traditional fulfillment centers to the robotic fulfillment centers. So imagine, in a traditional fulfillment centers, what we probably all have experienced one way or the other, where there's a person with a shopping cart walking around, this vast warehouse, picking things off a shelf and putting them in a cart and then doing something with it. Um, I got to work in one of those as part of management training, and I worked in one of those for a week, and I watched some of the most amazing people walking the floors at great speeds and at great accuracy, grabbing things off of shelves and putting orders together and moving things. And I'll tell you, I worked there a week. I was sore. I mean, it was a tough job. People opening boxes. You get a box cutter, and you're opening boxes when they come off the truck and prep them. Like, there's so many steps in all of that. And talking with some of the workers and some of the leaders, their jobs changed. They weren't walking 10 miles a day on a poured concrete floor anymore. They were standing still, and the robots would bring the products to them. And that, I don't know if it's necessarily if I saved someone's from quitting because of that, but you could definitely see the transformation, the type of work that people were doing because of robotics.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think, just kind of looking forward, how do you think robotics will impact manufacturing and supply chain management in general? I mean, if you had to put your crystal ball in place here, what
I,
would you
I
predict?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to be extraordinary impact. It's a matter of, finding the right use cases that can be automated with these robots, and we're already seeing it, in our customers where, Spot is doing inspections and Stretch is moving boxes, and Atlas is going to be, performing the job of a material handler in these Hyundai factories. And I think as we continue to learn more about our customers, we feel very good about being able to enhance our robots even further as they need it. So AI is going to speed up that transformation. I don't know where I saw this, and maybe it just came out of a conversation, but I think robotics in general is heading towards its own Chat GPT moment, right? If you think about when you first learned about and saw Chat GPT, generative AI became, dinner table talk in every household in the world. And robotics is heading there, right? There's going to be some use case that shows the world the potential and changes the way that we think about things, and that's definitely on the horizon, right? I don't know what it is, who's going to do it, how it's going to work, but absolutely, this convergence of robotics, the technology, the actuators, the ability to move with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the ability to speed all of this up is really going to build something pretty incredible.
Yeah. I imagine the consumerization of robots will help that. Once consumers start buying robots for their kids or just to have robots around the house, things like that, that's when you've really hit that tipping point of adoption.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of work to be done there, right? Because working in a home is completely unpredictable,
Hmm.
right? Your factory, your work sites are far more predictable than what you would expect at home, and robots need to have that ability to think. What is that? What is that environment? What do I do? And most importantly, is it's got to keep people safe, right? These robots, at the end of the day, they're machines. They have weight, they have momentum, and that it needs to be safe. And that's something that we take very, very seriously in what we do.
What do your customers initially think about robots? Especially, I mean, if I back up for a second, we're all used to seeing robots out on shop floors, right? Robots that sort of move things down an assembly line and
Yep.
for the really mundane tasks, the very repetitive tasks. We're used to seeing robots and machinery that's very sophisticated,
Yep.
multi-million dollar machines, things like that. So
Sure.
that's been around for a while. That whole automation um, on the shop floor has been happening for quite some time. But when you talk about true robotics and the way you guys are defining it, how do people respond to it? Even the ones that eventually buy the robots. I mean, is there a certain amount of skepticism, uncertainty, excitement? I mean, how would you describe or generalize the people's reaction to it?
I think it's all of the above, right? That you've described it, which is one of the reasons why I like to take the robot out whenever I can. As a CIO, I think it's my duty to help educate other IT practitioners that we need to be thinking about robotics the same way we think about ERP systems, right? Change management is absolutely critical, right? You know this. I listened to you long enough, Eric, to know change management is sort of top of mind in any ERP project. Robotics is no different. And I've asked, some of the field engineers, like, what's it like when you first walk in? Understanding what's the reaction going to be, especially now when someone might look across the aisle and say, "Oh, that robot's going to take my job." And so, I said, "So what do you do?" They said, "Well, for the first 2 weeks, they bring Spot to the lunchroom, and they walk the dog into the lunchroom, and people, come over, get to know it a little bit, take a picture." Spot is great for selfies. Um, control the robot, drive it, like just start to see what it's like and have a conversation about it and do it. And that's a big part of the change management transformation when we bring robots on site. And I always like to tell that story because I just thought it was such a great use of our talent in a way to share and educate with people before the project even starts. And so, yeah, it's a big way of just trying to educate people and get them comfortable.
Yeah, yeah, that's super cool and super interesting. I imagine over time that becomes more and more natural, a natural adoption as people, especially even, seeing a video like the one we just showed or talking about use cases like these. I think that people start to open up once they see the possibilities or some of the possibilities that could happen with the robotics.
Absolutely.
Um, so how do you guys? So I kind of see. Correct me if I'm wrong. I kind of see two different angles that you guys work from. You have you opened up by talking about how you're trying to make the world a better place, essentially, with robotics. And so there's a sort of grand visioning and this grand innovation that you guys pursue, and it almost reminds me a little bit of Steve Jobs. Like, you guys aren't necessarily going to the market and doing market analysis to see what kind of robot you should build. It almost seems like you guys are building something that no one's really thinking about. But then there's the manufacturers that have like very tangible, specific use cases that may or may not be sexy, or
Yep.
may or may not be as sexy as that robot doing breakdancing moves
Yep.
that I showed you. So how do you work with and collaborate with manufacturers, some of your customers, to to build better use cases or build a better product here?
Well, the advantage we have right out of the gate is that we're owned by Hyundai Motor Group. So, we look no further than, across the hall to our Hyundai counterparts, and we're leveraging them for scaling our operations. Obviously, they're manufacturing experts, and they have a lot of influence on how we are building our own production environments. And then they're also taking the robots and using them in their factories and providing feedback. So we can do that almost in private, right, before we start talking to our customers per se. But look, we spend a lot of time, often at our expense, going into customer sites before, during, and after projects. and just learning. Look, for the first 2 years in 2020 and 2021, when the world was sort of, under, pandemic control, um, customers were buying spot, right? And they were trying it out for innovation. Um, we were partnering with all the hospitals here in the Boston area on how to interact with potential COVID patients, right? And keeping our people safe. And so each of those becomes a learning experience. And where, our product management team is amazing. And the amount of time that they spend talking to customers and just going to the sites and visiting the sites and seeing the physical space and looking at how the robots can get involved is a big part of why, we see the success and why we're so excited about the future and the work that our robots are going to do.
Yeah. That's very, very cool. Um, Here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian says, do you believe that as robots evolve, we'll need new kinds of management or leadership roles like robot operations managers or AI workflow designers to coordinate all of this? And maybe to add to that, will it be a human or a robot? If the answer is yes, would it be human or robot that would do this?
Darian, that's an outstanding question. It's interesting. If you talk to Salesforce, they'll tell you, your boss will be, an agent, right, at some point, right? But Vala Afshar is one of my friends. He's the digital chief evangelist at Salesforce. Talks a lot about that. He says you'll have agentic coworkers. You might have an agentic boss. Darian's question is spot on. I like to say, all of these lights out and smart factories that we're going to build still will need smart people to run them. Right? They're going to need people that know how and understand how to manage a robotic fleet, right? The productivity of a single person is grown, to the nth degree based on the number of robots that they control. And that's sort of why our products are evolving this way with that orbit fleet management. So yeah, I think there's going to be different types of management. There's going to be different types of people on the ground working. We have this really cool a concept video that we show what a factory of the future looks like. And it's all of our robots working together with some of our partners' robots, but there's humans still there. Like there's humans on the floor, there's humans in the control room. It's definitely going to be sort of a co-working piece. But yeah, we need managers and leaders and thinkers about how do we apply this technology in the most effective way, and how do we take advantage of the productivity gains, the safety gains, the accuracy gains that come from all of this. And it allows humans, right? It allows a company the opportunity now to sort of, change their resources and redeploy resources in more strategic ways. Studying data analytics, studying performance data, looking at patterns and thinking critically. Those are all things that humans excel at, and I don't see that being replaced anytime soon.
Yeah, for sure. And when you and I were first talking about doing this interview, I think I was sharing with you, I was kind of struggling with what angle should we focus on? Do we focus on the ERP implementation that we're helping you in Boston Dynamics with, or do we focus on the robotics piece of it and how robotics can be used and how you guys are seeing manufacturers use robotics? We decided to focus on the manufacturing piece of it.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you just one question around your own digital transformation, because on one hand, you guys are selling a product here that enables true transformations for manufacturers and other types of organizations, but you guys yourselves are going through your own digital transformation, your own ERP project. Can you just tell us a little bit about that at a high level? Kind of what is it? What's leading you down this path? This is obviously third stage and Boston Dynamics are working together on this project, on this initiative, but tell us a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Sure. We run our entire business on Salesforce, that including our ERP system is something called Rootstock. And as a CIO and an IT practitioner, I have what I'd like to describe as nirvana, that I have a single customer object, a single product object, a single order object. And I've never had that before, right? It was always in multiple systems, and I would be focused on integrations and how do I move a lead to an opportunity, into an order, into a case. Like I never had that before, right? You were always doing all this integration. We have no integration, right? Because it's all done on the same platform, and that was by design, right? When I came into Boston Dynamics, I had implemented SAP a number of times, just about every module. I had implemented NetSuite. I implemented Oracle eBusiness Suite. I had run Microsoft Dynamics and Infor Sightline. And I said, I want to do something different. And fortunately, I aligned very, very well with our leadership team here when we came in the door and said, we don't want to do the SAP Oracle thing. Like that was my CEO's, like his mandate was like, I don't want to do it. And I think they were just scared, right, of what they had heard over the years because they had never done it either. They had all worked here at Boston Dynamics, and I think they ran the business on QuickBooks. And so getting an opportunity to build out Salesforce and Rootstock on the Salesforce platform was extraordinary, and it's the backbone of what we do. The project that we're working on now is really about how do we make it better, right? It's been 5 years. We've grown considerably as a company, and how do we, better tune our ERP environment to support the scale that we want and to support the business needs that have evolved over time. I'll tie robotics and ERP here for a second, right? Eric, I've been a fan of you, long before third stage. And the thing that I always like about your methodology and that I, preach to my own teams is sort of like, you got to get good at current state analysis. Like you got to understand sort of how do you do things today. Then you also have to have a future vision of what it is that you want to do so that you can identify the gaps and create a plan to get there. And I've gone through this cycle probably 4 times in the last 15 years where we do a very determined and focused current state analysis, understanding what the future might look like, and then what are the gaps to get there. And maybe it's buying a new ERP system, or maybe it's putting together a tiger team to go and invest in certain areas to do it. Robotics, I think, is very much going to be the same thing. Like, what is your current state? What are the things that you're doing today? What are the problems that you're trying to solve? And then how do robots fit into that as a means to, improve worker efficiency, improve company productivity and accuracy, and all of those things. And without that solid current state and future vision, robots are just going to be a shiny, button that sits in the corner and we let it dance every now and again. And that's not at all what we want to do here.
Right. Although it does make for great YouTube videos.
Oh, sure does. Oh, absolutely does.
Well, that's super interesting. And I'd love to have you back on the podcast to talk more specifically in a lot more detail around that transformation and sort of some of your battle wounds from having been through this a few times now. Sure. On your own digital transformation journeys. But thanks for that brief overview in the meantime. Well, I appreciate you being here today. This is a super interesting conversation, and time flies when you're having fun and talking about robots. We've got a lot of questions we didn't get to, but hopefully we can cover some of those in a follow-up session. But how can people learn more about what are the best ways to learn more about Boston Dynamics and to connect with you?
Well, certainly you can find me on LinkedIn. Happy to have these conversations. It's an area that I'm really passionate about. Visit us online at our website, bostondynamics.com. There's case studies out there. Like you said earlier, Eric, subscribe to our YouTube channel or TikTok, Instagram, follow us in any of those locations. We're always dropping really amazing videos. Usually there's a little strategy behind when we do it, which is always really fun. But my message for everybody is, as we think about the use of robotics in the work that we do, and it doesn't just necessarily have to be around, manufacturing and the other industries that we talked about. It really could be anywhere. But I always tell people that the sooner that we can begin to think about robots as co-pilots and not adversaries is the sooner we can adopt this technology into our jobs and into our home lives. And it's just going to be a really, really incredible future that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, super exciting. And it's got to be super exciting for you to be sort of on the forefront of that whole movement.
Sure is.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, thank you for being here, Chad. Really appreciate you sharing your insights and taking your time here today. Thank you to the audience for the great questions here. By the way, I was just notified that I was misspelling Gary's name. It's actually Jerry. So I had it right the first time, but I apologize for that. Jerry, thank you for the great questions from you and everyone else in the audience. Thank you for that. And again, this podcast will get edited and we'll add additional content to it to create a new version of the Transformation Ground Control podcast. Be sure to check out transformationgroundcontrol.com to learn more about that podcast. And I'm also going to put up a QR code on the screen here on the top left side of your screen right here. It's our new guide to AI strategy. So be sure to check that out if you're interested in robotics, which is highly correlated or connected to AI. be sure to check that out. We just launched that strategy guide last week. You can download it for free on our website. So just scan that QR code if you'd like, and I'll drop a link in the chat as well for people that are watching this after the fact. So thanks again for being here, everyone. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you all same time, same place next week. We'll stream to all the different platforms, covering different digital transformation topics. Next week in this live session, we'll have, it's actually going to be a executive mastermind group. We're launching an executive mastermind program. We're going to have 5 of our team members on that panel discussion. We're going to sort of soft launch that mastermind, just open to the public to launch it. And we're inviting people to join that group. So be sure to check that out. That'll be the topic next week that we cover. And you mentioned Rootstock, Chad. We're actually going to have the chief marketing officer of Rootstock.
Raj.
Yeah, Raj.
All right.
Raj will be here in sometime in May. I forgot the exact date, but
Great.
in May he'll be on here. So be sure to stay tuned to that. And we do these every same time, same place every week. So have a great week, and we'll see you all next time.